And I think even Netanyahu said something, or in a hint perhaps, that even if he is now the leader, but it's a leader of 26 different groups of disparate peoples, very hard to join them all together. He has a big job ahead of him to try to unite everyone. And I hope he will succeed. But we know the real thing that will unite us is if we all, like it says originally, we came to Har Sinai to accept the Torah, ki ish echad b'lev echad. Even in the desert, the Gemara says that they were divided often. Rashi says there, most of their times they came to encamp, they were divided. They would have lots of arguments. This is my place, no, this is my place. Once in all of 40 years, they had an encampment which didn't have a machlokas when they came to Har Sinai. Hashem, I guess, somehow made a miracle or something, and also probably people realize this is a momentous time. We should kind of forget our petty differences for once, and that can help. And one way or the other, we came together as Ke'ish Echad B'Lev Echad, the Chazal tell us, like one man with one heart. And that was what we needed to accept the Torah. Without that, it would have been very hard to accept the Torah, because the Torah is really given as one Torah for one nation. In fact, we recently had a Gemara that said, well, why don't we do something in Eretz Yisrael? The Gemara says, we don't want to do it in Eretz Yisrael if they don't do it in Babel. Because we'll make agudos, Rashi says, even though on one hand, agudos Israel, it's a good thing to have an aguda, right? But on the other hand, if there's agudos, there's this group and that group and another group and another group, even in the times of the Gemara, it was recognized to be a destructive element. And that's, Rashi says, that could look like there's two Torahs, right? Rashi's just explaining the prohibition in the Torah of lo siskodudu. You should not make different groups. You should not create different groups, because it's basically a chilul Hashem. Hashem gave us one Torah, and it looks like there's many Torahs. And even today, we know it's a big problem. Non-religious people have no understanding. Why do you guys always argue? And why is every halacha is another argument, another 12 opinions, and it creates a very big chilul Hashem. Obviously, we do it for the right reasons, because we're trying to reach the truth. But in the end of the day, this is not the way the Torah is supposed to be kept. And when we come to this period of time, right before Pesach, this is really the time to think about it. We are reenacting, to some extent, coming out of Egypt. And in Egypt, they were also very divided. Besides the fact that there were slaves, and with a slave mentality, there was only one small group who had been learning Torah. Shevet Levi had succeeded in avoiding the draft, so to speak, and avoiding the work of Paro, and Moshe finagled to get them, everyone got a day off, which they were able to keep Shabbos. But basically, the Levi were sitting and learning, and the other people were working hard. And then amongst the people working hard, we know there were different groups, because the 4/5 were killed out in the Makav Choshech. It means they weren't holding by going out of Egypt. Their minds were not on the same wavelength as the other 1/5 that was taken out, that wanted to follow Hashem into the desert. So there was a lot of division there as well. And even the ones who did come out, we see all the time throughout the desert, another argument, another machlokas, Koirach and Dasan Vaviram, and we see different occasions where there's arguments and people complaining, and it's a very difficult time. Moshe Rabbeinu had a hard time running the nation, and one time we were able to join together as a nation is a momentous event in the history of the world, really. We're coming up to a reenactment of that, right? We're trying to come out of Egypt. We're trying to get together as a group to come out of Egypt. Even when we brought Korban Pesach, it was done as a group. You did not bring an individual Korban Pesach. You had to do it as a chabura. You had to join together with a whole group of people and divide up the Korban Pesach and make sure there's enough to go around and there's not going to be too much left over. Not supposed to have any left over, really. So you have to make a calculation of how many people to include. It could be up to 30, 40 people. And they all had to eat it together. And that's maybe a certain hint to the fact that this is what we're training ourselves to do. When we come to this yeshiva, even though each one is in a separate shir very often, and we can feel like on our own, especially in a yeshiva like this, where some people come for a few shirim and they go home, and everyone's sort of very much on their own, we should still strive to feel like a yeshiva. originally that's why the shmooze, once a week, we encouraged everyone to come to the shmooze together, to feel like one yeshiva. Like in most yeshivas, that's, no matter who you are, you come together for at least one shiur a week. It helps to feel a certain unity. So we're coming now to reenact coming out of Egypt with all of the difficulties of really the same kind of difficulties. We're trying to free ourselves of a certain slavery, perhaps not the same type as they were involved in. But we're trying as well to free ourselves of certain things which keep us down, which keep us from progressing to what we could accomplish, both intellectually, emotionally, or psychologically, etc., in our relationship with Hashem, with our relationship with our spouses, with our relationship with our friends and relatives and rebbeim, etc. With all these people, there are impediments that keep us from relating properly. In a sense, we're slaves to certain activities that we tend to gravitate towards. The way we talk to people, we tend to fall back onto the easier way of dealing with an argument rather than taking each argument on its own merit, or working on something that we've worked on before and not being defeated with a defeatist attitude. All of these things tend to keep us down, and if we can free ourselves of those things, very often we just go right ahead. It's similar in a way to a Baal Tshuva when he starts the journey of being a Baal Tshuva. Then he comes into the yeshiva, everything's new, everything's strange, in a sense everything's wonderful though. And he starts to give up certain things that he was used to, and he starts to learn a new language, to learn Gemara and so on and so forth. And slowly, he's able to give up certain things that he used to think were important, or certain ways of thinking, like Gemara often challenges our way of thinking. And certainly halacha, to keep halacha properly, challenges our old way of thinking. It's not necessarily what I want to do, it's what Hashem wants to do, and it's also not necessarily what just seems right to me. It's often, let's make sure that it's something in the halacha. We might have to ask, we might have to look it up. A lot of these things are, at Baal Tshuva often, and most people who have gone through that are used to that. But unfortunately, after a long period of time, we get sort of used to the new way of doing things, and that becomes a new slavery. Again, we don't really think as much before we do something, and we don't necessarily try to progress beyond what we've accomplished. So all those tasks are really the new going out of Egypt for us. All those new ways of trying to grow, which very often just to realize we can do it, to grow into a whole new person, even at our age or whatever, that itself is a kind of a potentially freeing concept. At least today in the world, we have the world itself has come to a new awareness that no matter what your age, you can create a new life for yourself. You see people, even very older people, going back to school, going back for learning a new career, and sometimes volunteering for things that they would have never volunteered for earlier in their life, and they create a new life for themselves. And you see it certainly in Eretz Yisrael, people making aliyah, sometimes at a very old age, when things are all new and difficult, and everything is difficult, and you hear people always complaining, but that also means that people are really changing their lives. It's just difficult. So they let everybody know how difficult it is. But the truth is, we have a lot of examples around us that can challenge us to rise to the occasion. But this is a time we want to really concentrate. Perhaps on a certain level, that's why we have a month off from yeshiva. Not the time you want to stop learning Torah right before such a momentous going out of Egypt, as it were. And especially when we said the whole thing was to come to Har Sinai as one nation, and maybe we can even reenact that this year and be zoicha to Mashiach.